Hello everyone, I'm back in Journal 2, and we'll be going through part 2 of chapter 12. Be aware of false teachings. Each spirit in man is a unit, so the creation in itself a unit, and has no other powers besides it. In itself the creation is pure spirit, and therefore is infinite power. For it is the one with itself, and nothing exists outside of it. Therefore, bear aware of the false and adulterated teachings of the future, which will insult me by calling me the son of the creation, and also as the son of God. For these teachings lead to lies, and because of them the world will suffer much want and distress. Do not pay heed to the false teachings of the future, which are trying to make into one, the Spirit, the creation, and me, and making a trinity thereof, which again shall be a unit. Be aware of these false and adulterated teachings of the future. For a trinity is impossible according to the logical laws of the creation. There is only one. Not two-ness, not three-ness, not four-ness, not five-ness. One. Verily I say to you, the princes keep their people down, and the sovereigners do violence unto them. But when they use violence, the new cults will do violence, when they adulterate my teachings and proceed to disperse them. Be aware of them, and do not carry the yoke of the false teachings because of force. It shall not be so among you, but you shall be great and teach the wisdom, as I come to teach the wisdom and knowledge among the people. So you shall continue to teach, so the truth may penetrate. And to Jerusalem on the donkey. When they came near Jerusalem, to Bethphage, how you say it, near the mountain of Olives, Emmanuel sent out two of his disciples and said to them, Go to the place which lies before you, and you will find a female donkey tied to a post, and a foal with her. Unite her and bring her to me, or untie her and bring her to me. For she was a gift to me, and is only encamped here, or there. And if anyone asks you a question as to why you are taking the animal, say to them, Emmanuel of Nazareth needs her. Soon they will let you take her. The disciples went forth and did as instructed. And they returned with the female donkey and the fowl, and they put their clothes on its back, and Emmanuel sat thereon. When the people heard that Emmanuel, the King of Wisdom, would come, they spread their clothes on the paths, and cut off branches from the trees and spread them out on the path. The people who went ahead of him and those following him screamed and said, Hail to the descendants of David! Praise to him who comes to publicize the new teaching. When they entered into Jerusalem, the whole city was excited and said, Who is it that comes? But the people said, That is Emmanuel, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee, who brings a new teaching of wisdom. Purging the temple. In Jerusalem, Emmanuel went into the temple, and when he saw what was taking place, he became furious. There were dealers, salespeople, merchants dealing with doves, and many money changers who established themselves therein. I gotta ask you, does this not sound like our temples nowadays? What's different? Like back then, they were selling, if you could slaughter a lamb, buy the lamb, slaughter it, and you're forgiven your sins. You just gotta buy the right one, make sure there's no blemishes. But now you get the Son of God. You gotta put a money plate now. It's no different. He shouted at them in a loud voice, It is written, The temple is to be a place of teaching, a place of contemplation, but you changed it to a den of thieves. In his anger, he kicked over the tables of the money changers, and the chairs of the dealers of the doves, and drove them all out with the whip of a donkey driver. Then he allowed the blind and the lame to come to him in the temple, and he healed them all who came. When the high priests and scribes saw the great deeds he accomplished, and the people were screaming in the temple, saying, Hail to the descendants of David, because they were extremely agitated. They became extremely agitated. They shouted at him, Do you hear what they're saying? But Emmanuel said to them, Are you so afraid of the truth that the truth annoys you? He immediately left there in the temple, and left the city and went to Bethany, and stayed there overnight. I gotta ask you, does this truth annoy you? But by whose authority? When Emmanuel again came into the temple and taught, the high priests, scribes, and the elders of the people came to him and asked, With what authority are you doing these things, and who gave you the power? Emmanuel angrily responded, I too want to ask you a word. If you answer that question, I will tell you from where the power originates that allows me to do these things. From where was the baptism of John? Was it through the creation or through people? And they pondered the question and discussed it among themselves. If we say it was through the creation, then he will say, then why do you not believe in it? And why aren't you following the laws? If we say it was through men, we will have to be afraid of the people, for they considered John a prophet. The parable of two sons. So they answered Emmanuel, saying, We don't know. Thereupon he said to them, You generations of vipers, so will I not tell you by whose power I do these things. But what do you think? A man had 2 sons, and went to the first one and said, My son, go and work today in the vineyard. But he answered and said, Yes, father, I will go. Yet he did not go. So he went to the other son and said, My son, go and work today in the vineyard. But the second son answered and said, I don't want to go. I don't want to do it, and therefore I will not go. But soon afterwards he felt remorse and went to the vineyard and worked. Now I ask you, which of the two did the will of the Father? They said, The latter, of course. Then Emmanuel rebuked them. Verily, verily, I say to you, the publicans and prostitutes will receive the wisdom of knowledge before you do. Let me ask you this. I looked at it like this on that part. It's doing the will of the Father is by works. What you actually did versus what you spout off and say you're going to do. Just as the preachers say, oh, I was being drunk and I cheated on my wife and all these other things. Well, you kept telling the church you weren't going to do that and that you learned your lesson. That was your words. But what was your actions contrary to that? You did exactly what you said you weren't going to do again and again and again. And so you're a liar. Your words don't mean anything. It's your actions, your deeds, your works, as they put it. John and the prophets came to you and taught you the right way, and you did not believe them. But the publicans and the prostitutes believed them. And even though you saw it, you did not repent or change your mind, so that you would have afterwards also believed the truth. You know the truth, and yet you deny it, so that you would profit thereby in terms of gold, silver, and goods, and that you thereby get rich at the expense of the poor, whom you have led astray. The parable of the vine dressers. But listen to another parable about a vineyard, and perhaps you will understand if your mind is not cracked. There was a lord who owned much. He planted a vineyard and built a fence around it. He dug a winepress therein, built a tower, and leased it to all the vine dressers. He then left the country. When the time came that the grapes were ripe, he sent his servants to the vine dressers so that they would receive the grapes. The vine dressers took the servants. One was beaten, one was killed outright, and the third one they stoned to death. Again the Lord sent other servants, more than the first time, and they too were all killed. At last he sent the son of the administrator to them, for he was sure the vine dressers would fear the administrator's son. But when the vine dressers saw the son of the administrator, they spoke among themselves, This is their heir. Come, let us kill him and take his inheritance. They took him from the vineyard and killed him, or so they thought. While deeming him dead, put him in a tomb where he was in a state of semi-death for some 3 days and 3 nights, and then fled. And the son arose and returned to the Lord of the vineyard. But when the Lord of the vineyard heard of what had happened to the son of the administrator, what did you think he did? They responded, He would probably have the villains killed and turn his vineyard over to the other vine dressers, who would give him the fruits at the right time. He most certainly must have turned over the legacy to the son of the administrator at an earlier date. Emmanuel spoke, You recognize the meaning, and that is what you have read in the Scriptures. The stone that the builders threw away became the cornerstone. Therefore I tell you, I am the son of the administrator of the vineyard. My teachings are not strange to you, and are very well known, for they have already been given to you by the prophets, and you know them thereof. But if you disagreed them, or disregarded them, and interpret them to your own advantage, that is, accuse me of lying, you thus accuse God of lying. It was upon God's advice that I was created by one of his kind, aka Gabriel, and because of whom I am a prophet here before you now. And I like to think this. All of our preaching stuff, they keep our Bible the way it is, where they can have all their interpretations, your doctrines, your whatever have you, because that's their interpretation or their belief. They can take it and do whatever they want with it. But with this, it's very straightforward. You kind of just look for yourself. He explains the parables. I mean, the ones he doesn't, he expects you to use your own God-given mind and reasoning to figure it out. So I expect you to do just that, or he does at least. He's not going to force you, though. That's in the laws if you look at those. Therefore I say to you, peace and joy shall be taken away from you, and also from your people, for all times, and they shall be given to a people which brings forth its fruits. And we'll leave that there for now. I'll be into part 2.